How can you lose a jetliner? How can it vanish in thin air? We were clueless as to what could have caused this tragedy right under our noses in an era when we have the internet, satellite, radar communication.
For 11 years, the world lived with a bruise that never fully healed. 239 lives were lost when MH370 disappeared, leaving only ideas, pieces, and a void where answers should have been.
Aviation experts believe that the plane most likely crashed somewhere in the southern portion of the Indian Ocean after running out of fuel. It seems that the aircraft flew in the wrong direction for thousands of miles to a distant part of the ocean.
But now, something has shifted. On December 30th, 2025, a new search team is heading back into the Indian Ocean with technology they claim should have existed a decade ago. Why now? What changed? And why are investigators suddenly confident the truth was hiding in a place everyone once dismissed? But to understand why 2025 is different, we have to go back to where it all went wrong. What did they miss? The catastrophic search that found nothing. The first search for MH370 was supposed to be simple. Painful, yes, but simple. Find the debris field, locate the black boxes, and piece together the final moments of the flight. That's what investigators promised in 2014, when satellites, warships, and aircraft from multiple nations converged on the southern Indian Ocean. But instead of clarity, they found something else. Silence. A silence so vast it swallowed entire fleets. In those early days, confidence ran high. Experts believed the aircraft had followed a predictable path after its final handshake with Inmarsat satellites. They mapped the so-called seventh arc, a curved line across the open sea that represented the plane's final automated signal. Search teams swept along it, believing the truth was just hours away. But the ocean had other plans. Storms rolled in. Waves rose higher than houses. The equipment malfunctioned. And beneath that raging surface lay an abyss deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Drones and sonar scanners struggled. Entire weeks passed with no meaningful readings. The ocean floor was jagged, violent, and unexplored, a terrain no one expected to navigate while racing against time. As the months dragged on, hope thinned. A search area the size of a small country was scanned in high resolution, but nothing appeared. Not a wing, not a wheel, not a single confirmed piece of wreckage in the main underwater zone. It was as if the airplane had dropped into another dimension. Families begged for answers. Governments argued, and with mounting costs and political pressure, the first official search was suspended. No closure, no cause, nothing but questions. Then came the second search, led by the private company Ocean Infinity. Using advanced autonomous underwater vehicles, they targeted a new region west of the seventh arc. Based on drift models, satellite reinterpretations, and new scientific simulations. For the first time, optimism returned. The public watched as these sleek orange robots disappeared beneath the waves, scanning thousands of square miles with unmatched precision. Yet, once again, the ocean remained mute. No debris field, no fuselage, no engines, just endless underwater mountains, canyons, and silence. The failure of these early searches didn't just stun investigators, it shattered public trust. How could modern technology locate shipwrecks from 1912 and submarines lost during the Cold War, yet fail to find a massive Boeing 777 in the age of satellites and AI? What went wrong? And what did experts miscalculate so drastically? The answer, it turned out, wasn't in what they found, but in what they overlooked. And that oversight would open the door to a discovery no one expected. The hidden witness. How hobbyists solved what billions couldn't. What if the clue that broke the MH370 mystery was sitting in basements and garages around the world, logged by people who do it for the love of radio and a cup of tea? That sounds like late-night internet lore, but it is exactly what happened. The key came from a global hobbyist network called WSPR, short for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, a system designed to map how faint radio signals bounce around the globe. It was never meant to track aircraft. It was never even meant to be serious evidence. And yet, it became the single most important data set nobody thought to check. WSPR began as an experiment among amateur radio operators. Folks set up small transmitters and receivers that send and record whisper-quiet signals across thousands of kilometers. These signals are tiny, often buried in noise, and the whole point is to study how the ionosphere and atmosphere bend radio waves. Because hobbyists do not throw away data, WSPRnet accumulated years of continuous, unfiltered recordings going back to 2008. That meant on March 8, 2014, while satellites and radar were busy doing official jobs, thousands of anonymous devices were passively logging the electromagnetic fingerprint of the sky. Fast forward nearly a decade. Independent researchers scanned that archive and found anomalies lining up with the southern flight path people had assumed for MH370. These were not neat traces that screamed airplane. They were subtle perturbations in propagation patterns, bursts, and fades that, when stitched together and modeled, matched a moving metallic object crossing hundreds of miles of ocean. The big difference was that WSPR recorded everything. Professional systems filter out noise to stay focused. Hobbyists kept the noise. It turned out the noise was a clue. The breakthrough took a stubborn, meticulous mind and a willingness to break orthodoxy. Richard Godfrey and other independent analysts reprocessed WSPR data against satellite arcs and drift models. They treated the hobby network not as collateral, but as primary evidence. Their work showed the plane might have flown much further south than the 2014 to 2017 search areas had assumed. In other words, billions were spent sweeping a zone that, according to this newly unearthed civilian archive, missed the main wreckage by a wide margin. This is where the story twists. It is not just a vindication for grassroots science. It is a damning critique of institutional habit. Official analyses relied heavily on filtered satellite handshake data and Inmarsat-derived arcs. Those methods are sophisticated, but they make assumptions, and assumptions can blind you. WSPR exposed that the model-based certainty of 2014 was at best incomplete and at worst systematically distorted. The people who had been labeled conspiracy theorists for years suddenly held the receipts. Ocean Infinity's 2025 proposal and subsequent search plans explicitly incorporated these amateur data patterns, marking a rare moment when citizen science shaped an official search strategy. That marriage between private search tech and grassroots data is precisely why the hunt resumed, and why there is now a real, testable probability map that was never flown over in the first searches. Think about that for a second. A quiet hobby network, built by people who enjoy radio propagation, had the coverage and continuity to record a signature others missed. That signature rewrote the search area and forced professionals to reevaluate hard-won conclusions. What looks like a triumph of clever engineering is also a cautionary tale. Expertise can become tunnel vision, and data that does not fit the model gets discarded rather than interrogated. So, if hobbyists pointed the ships in the right direction, what did the new data imply about the plane's final moments? And crucially, what clues about the cockpit, about who was awake, who was flying, and what systems were turned off, did other researchers find while amateur radio was quietly pointing the way? The simulator's secrets, what the pilot really knew. When the story turned from missing plane to missing answers, one discovery lit up every newsroom. Files deleted from Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah's home flight simulator. That moment in July 2016 felt like a reveal scene in a thriller. The kind that quickly gets replayed, retweeted, and weaponized into a single, neat narrative. Investigators seized the hard drive, and the FBI helped recover deleted data to see if those simulations held a roadmap to MH370's final route. What emerged was unnerving in its precision. Recovered files included a session dated February 2, 2014, just over a month before the disappearance, showing 6 waypoints and a simulated route that mirrored the aircraft's actual, later path. The simulation plotted a departure from Kuala Lumpur, an ascent over the Malacca Strait, a turn toward the tip of Sumatra, and then a long, steady track south into the Indian Ocean, with a final descent consistent with fuel exhaustion. FBI analysts examined these deleted files and confirmed the recordings. For many, that looked like proof of planning, which is why the smoking gun story stuck. Headlines leaned hard into a pilot self-harm narrative, and social feeds filled with outraged, simplified verdicts. The simulator session provided a tidy cause and effect that satisfied the hunger for closure. Practice a route, execute the route. Case closed. But reality rarely lines up so cleanly. The Malaysian Safety Investigation Report, the 2018 official account, treated the simulator evidence as part of the dossier, yet refused to convert circumstantial patterns into legal conclusions. The report acknowledged the presence of the simulated route on Shah's home computer, and it recorded the deleted files, but it ultimately stated that the team was unable to determine the real cause of MH370's disappearance. The report stopped short of blaming mechanical failure, sabotage, or a security breach, and it did not assign a definitive motive. In short, the files demonstrated deliberate diversion, but they did not answer why. That gap between capability and motive is where the debate hardened. If someone practiced the route, did that mean intent? Not necessarily. Humans are messy. Pilots simulate odd routes for training, for curiosity, or to test scenarios. Deleting files from a personal computer looks suspicious to a public hungry for answers. But deletion alone does not prove malice or premeditation. Shah's family and acquaintances described him as a passionate aviator without the obvious red flags that often accompany violent acts. No clear financial ruin, no ideological manifesto, no note. Malaysian authorities ultimately cleared him of formal charges, citing insufficient evidence. There's also the chilling mathematical reality investigators keep reminding us about. Without the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, every theory remains probabilistic. Later, rigorous reanalyses framed the possibilities differently. By 2023 to 2025, careful studies argued that 3 broad scenarios remained roughly equally consistent with the technical evidence. A catastrophic accident that incapacitated the crew, a murder self-harm where the perpetrator remained alive during descent, or a murder self-harm where the perpetrator was already dead. None of those outcomes can be proven without the black boxes. That uncertainty explains why official reports took the cautious, unsatisfying stance they did. What this chapter leaves us with is uncomfortable and important. The simulator files are real. They show a practiced route that aligns with the flight. But practice is not motive, and correlation is not causation. The files turned Zahariya Shah into a focal point for grief, speculation, and anger. Yet they did not, and could not, solve the core riddle. What actually happened in the cockpit that night? So where does that leave investigators now that new searches are restarting with better maps? It leaves them chasing two separate but linked problems: where the wreckage lies and what occurred in those final minutes. And the next breakthrough did not come from a cockpit computer or a home PC. It came from the sky itself, satellite handshake data that, when reinterpreted with fresh eyes and new tools, changed the map entirely. How did reanalyzing the satellite signals rewrite the search area? And what did it reveal about the plane's final hours? Broken Ridge, the technology that couldn't search yesterday, but can today. Broken Ridge sounds like the kind of place you avoid if you care about your equipment. It is an underwater fracture zone in the southern Indian Ocean, roughly around 35 degrees south, and it is brutally complicated. Imagine an alien landscape under the waves. Steep submarine canyons, jagged ridges, sudden cliffs, and vents that throw up chaotic currents. That kind of terrain breaks sonar beams, tangles tethers, and chews up unmanned vehicles. In plain terms, Broken Ridge was where the ocean fought back. When the 2014 to 2017 searches were planned, the teams made a tactical choice: sweep the flatter, more predictable parts of the seafloor first. It was not a moral decision. It was logistics. Those earlier AUVS and ROVS were excellent for wide area mapping, but not for threading through underwater canyons that change depth and slope in minutes. Each dive carried a real risk of losing expensive kit in places where recovery is almost impossible. So Broken Ridge got only cursory attention. That decision left a big, messy blind spot on the map. Then came the debris drift studies. Those aren't glamorous works, but they are the kind of slow, grinding science that rewrites probability maps. Analysts reran drift models using updated ocean current data and found something striking. Flaperons and other fragments that washed up on African shores could plausibly have originated from wreckage trapped in the complex currents around Broken Ridge. Hydrothermal vent fields and steep canyon walls produce local eddies that standard drift models simply did not account for. Once those factors were folded in, the odds shifted. This geologic no man's land suddenly became a prime target. But having a theory and being able to look are different things. That's where technology caught up. The AUVs that combed Broken Ridge in 2018 and the new fleet used in 2025 are light years apart. Modern autonomous vehicles now boast sub-meter seabed imaging, far better inertial navigation, and collision avoidance systems that let machines hug chaotic terrain without clocking out. They run longer, withstand more pressure, and return higher fidelity maps that reveal wreckage shapes instead of fuzzy blobs. Ocean Infinity's public updates make this point plainly. Their newer tech performed very well over the challenging Broken Ridge feature and collected large volumes of high-quality data. That confidence is part of why Malaysia signed a no-find, no-fee deal to restart the hunt. There is another shift worth underlining: computational power and algorithms. The same satellite and drift data that guided the 2014 search now get reprocessed with far better models and more computing muscle. Combine refined Inmarsat reinterpretations, WSPR amateur radio overlays, and today's machine learning-enhanced seabed classifiers, and you turn once blurry probability zones into actionable search squares. It's the classic tech story. The place was never impossible. It was simply beyond yesterday's tools. So the scene is set. The map points to Broken Ridge, We finally have machines that can survive it. And private teams are willing to shoulder the financial risk because the models say the reward is real. This is technological redemption. Equipment that was too fragile for those rugged depths is now routine. And that leads us to the moment everyone's been waiting for. What happened when those machines actually went looking in the places nobody could safely search before? What did the 2025 survey find when it finally began scanning Broken Ridge with this new generation of tech? December 30th, the $70 million gamble that changes everything. On December 3rd, 2025, the Malaysian government made it official. After more than a decade of dead ends and vanished hope, the search for flight MH370 was about to restart. They announced a 55-day deep-sea expedition in the southern Indian Ocean, under a deal that turned heads in both aviation and financial circles. Ocean Infinity, the private search firm, would lead the operation. But here's the twist. Their contract was no find, no fee. A staggering $70 million was on the line, but only if they actually found the wreckage. If they came up empty-handed, not a single dollar. This isn't just a quirky contract, it's a statement. Ocean Infinity is betting tens of millions, placing absolute faith in their technology and models. Past search campaigns from 2014 to 2017 were funded regardless of outcome, so there was little financial risk. This model flips everything. They are either supremely confident or wildly desperate. Every piece of tech, every simulation, every drift analysis, and every sonar sweep had to work perfectly, or the gamble would fail. And from what experts say, it's more confidence than desperation. They've studied the ocean, recalculated the Inmarsat satellite data, and refined their search zones like never before. The technological arsenal on this mission is unlike anything used in prior efforts. Autonomous underwater vehicles scan the seabed with unprecedented precision, sending real-time sonar back to command vessels. They combine historical data with refined drift models and even leverage subtle patterns detected by amateur radio networks. Computational power crunches 11 years' worth of satellite and debris data, essentially giving the search team a time machine to reconstruct MH370's final moments. This isn't just a repeat of what failed before. This is a fundamentally new way to hunt a lost plane. The timing is striking. 11 years to the month since MH370 vanished, and 239 families are still waiting for answers. Parents, spouses, children, the trauma never went away. For some, it's not a memory, it's a daily reality. The world moved on, but their loss remained frozen in March 2014. And now, after more than a decade, the question resurfaces. Can technology, data, and human persistence finally close this chapter? Success would look like locating the main fuselage, recovering the flight data recorder, or finding pieces that finally tell the story of what happened that night. For families, it's closure. For aviation, it's a chance to rethink safety, tracking, and communications in ways that could prevent another MH370. And if they do find it, the investigation doesn't end. It evolves. Forensics, data analysis, and the cause of the disappearance all could finally be revealed, changing how airlines and regulators operate forever. In 24 days, this search begins, and if it succeeds, it will finally answer the question that has consumed millions worldwide. But the real story isn't just about finding a plane. It's about what discovery proves about how we handle evidence, how we interpret data, and how institutions fail, and occasionally succeed. But before we close this out, there's one more layer to this story that nobody is talking about. The 239 people whose lives ended on that plane, and what their legacy means for aviation's future. How does their story shape the rules we fly by today, and the safety measures we still take for granted? 239 lives, 227 passengers, and 12 crew from 15 nations vanished without bodies, a definitive cause, or closure. Families in Beijing, Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, and Melbourne still wait. The December 30th, 2025 search is the last hope for answers. If wreckage and recorders are recovered, we get forensics, closure, and aviation reforms, better tracking, stronger black boxes, and smarter communications. 11 years is a long time to wait for the truth. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe.